Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Man Talk Podcast number 3. I've got my guest, Daniel, over here from live in Dublin, California. Uh, Daniel, say hello to everyone.
Hey, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, glad to have you. This has been great so far. I'm glad to have you on. Um, Today we were going to talk about uh, more mentorship questions and dialogue. So I'm curious to see what you have to say, and hopefully you're up for it. What do you think?
Yeah, let's get the show on the road.
Okay, with that being said, Mr. Daniel, how did you begin in mentorship and why?
Mentorship. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that I explicitly was looking for mentorship. Um, Stumbled upon it in college when I joined the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, UC Davis Student Chapter. I said, hey, this looks interesting. No harm done in participating in mentorship as a mentee. And um, honestly, the rest is history. But I had a great mentor, Taylor Bricky, as well, Jacob. Great person, great mentor.
Great person.
Um, and he was very helpful. Um, I would say that having him as a mentor has really uh, shaped me as a mentor and inspired me to continue mentoring others along or for the last 7 years now. So, I valued everything he had to say, whether it was career, personal, classes, whatever it was, and really took that and ran with it for since 2012.
Yeah, I remember Taylor myself. He was in my class and very positive guy, very forward thinking in what he was going to do. He seemed to really help people back up no matter where they were at. We need more people like that. He was very positive and still is where he is right now over in the Bay Area. So it was all from Davis. It really started in college.
Yeah, it really did. And honestly, the first year was the only year I really considered myself truly a mentee. I would say second year and beyond has always been more active as a mentor than a mentee. Not to say I didn't have mentors, but I definitely took more of an active role as a mentor. But as throughout college as well as post college, it's a balancing act between finding mentors for yourself and putting yourself in position to be available for mentees, whether they are new or old.
I agree. It's been good to be in mentorship myself, being in UC Davis, and also in high school with the band. But this was my first go around in mentorship during undergraduate years. So, and I wouldn't have traded it. That was some good times. I think people really got the chance to learn in ways that they would have not had the opportunity to do that. So I enjoyed
Definitely.
every minute of it. So moving forward, the questions here. Um, can you describe the personal success you had in mentorship while you were in college?
Yeah, I would say um, so. The second, third, and fourth years, the idea of a mentorship family came into place, where it started out for the club saying, okay, there'll be each family will be 4 to 6 people, 1 or 2 mentors, and 3 to 4 mentees, which was it worked. It was great, but it caught on because there were a decent amount of mentorship families at that point in time that my mentors just they weren't as committed or didn't have as much time as they would have hoped for. So our mentorship family ended up just adopting anyone who really wanted to be a part of it. And I would say success was creating that community in the sense of stuff happened without necessarily the mentors needing to initiate anything. It didn't happen overnight. It took maybe half a year to get to this point, but it was more of the idea of, mentorship doesn't have to be like one-on-one. Doesn't have to be specific events. It can literally be, hey, we are all in a class together. Let's study afterwards, or whatever. It doesn't need to be as formal as the title mentorship has.
I agree, because the year before that, way more on the 1 to 2 people, and it was more of that you get a lunch with them once a quarter, and maybe you'll catch them a second time. Then before you know it, you may not see them again for like 8 weeks, and that was kind of a crude model. The mentorship family model really started to take off from other mentees being able to collaborate with each other even when the mentors aren't there, and I think that was really critical when they were going to go study together. So when we'd go to like the engineering library and have the upperclassmen studying on engineering topics versus the lower division stuff for the mentees, it was cool because there was this mimicked, oh, this is the place where I'm going to get my work done. This is the place where if I needed help from time to time, I know that there's people a few feet away from me doing harder stuff, and yet they're still working right beside
Exactly.
me. And I think that was cool for me too, because it wasn't just the mentors jumping in and seeing how the mentees were doing. I think it encouraged us to be better because you guys were right there with like your squad of like 12 people, and it's like, well, we can't just walk out right now. We are influencing each other's
Yeah.
work ethic just by us both being there.
Yeah. And, I would say, going back to kind of what I was saying and what you're saying, is the older style is like, okay, let me figure out a time and place to meet up with people, whether it's your mentor or a group of people. And what we're both saying is you do not need to have it be that formal. It should really be casual. Now there's a time and place for both, but at least during school, it should really be casual. It doesn't need to be a whole ordeal.
Yeah, as opposed to it being this very like, okay, I can't say this to my mentor or I can't say this to my mentee. It's a little more open in terms of what can go on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was also important in getting communication to function right from the start, because people really do get the sense of, oh, I really can open up to my mentor about this. Oh, he can actually open up to me about what's going on in upper class stuff, and it's not like this class warfare of, oh, you'll get there and you'll get crushed and it's going to be your own battle. It's like, no, I think there was a real sharing of experiences on both sides, and if you don't have that, I mean, it's kind of hard to bridge the gap, so to speak, with all the mentees and how their experiences in college.
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of successful mentees did you have as a mentor? So that would be your success in getting them to move forward.
Yeah. Well, I would say, seeing that group of people, mentees, continue throughout college, during the time I was there, after I left, and now even post college, just seeing how they all really stuck together. I mean, regardless of whether I'm in the loop or not, it goes on, which is really, I think, the most important thing, that biggest outcome and the most important one. Because the second you take away school or work, what does mentorship mean? It's more than just, oh, we are in school together, or oh, I need mentors specifically for work. It's people that you can keep in your life longer, that you can always go to.
Yeah, I would say that's a success. I would say, and I said this on the last podcast, I said you were probably the biggest success I had in terms of getting the mentorship family to work. Because it didn't just carry on from me to you, it carried on from me to you to the next gen to the next. Like, there's people that I've seen at Night with Industry, where it's this once a year thing where alumni come in, or other uh, companies come in, sometimes with alumni, and they help out the undergrads in getting jobs in the engineering market. And I was
Hmm.
still seeing them last year in 2018, and they're like, "You know this person? You know so and so? Oh, they were my mentor." And it's like, wow, okay, I remember when they were a mentor or a mentee to me, even like
Hmm.
several years ago. So it was just that same sense of excitement never really got lost. And that to me was just incredible because I've never heard of this before. Usually it's okay, that era's gone and now it's just kind of up to us, and then things kind of just settle down. But it looks like there really was some kind of impact. And I hope that we can keep doing this kind of thing even post college, to some of
Hmm.
these mentees who have become mentors who've gotten into industry. So yeah, I agree with you there. That's the ability for it to survive without, when the mentor is gone, is probably the biggest factor that people overlook.
Yeah.
So what do you moving on with the questions here? What do you think you got out of mentorship the most? It can be either undergrad or upper or lower division. Take your pick.
Yeah. I mean, I would say there are two sides of it. So the first side is, what are you giving? And, you know, how does that align with your values? And, one thing that I've really realized over the last year for me, as I was reflecting for material for business school applications, which are very reflection heavy. And Stanford asked, what matters most to you and why? And when I really thought back, it's just like, okay, it's people. Not just friends and family, but like connecting with the people, really building something there, those relationships. So I would say, um, in one aspect, that, it, the definition of community is very broad. I would say you're building your own community. So in that sense, I was building my own community as well as a community for others. Now, I think specifically for me, not only did that build a community for myself, but I would also say it also had personal development, that, I guess it's made, eh, just being exposed to more things, being a little bit more knowledgeable, seeing what other people have to go through, and giving you that tool set to more or less learn how to think a little bit more outside of the traditional sense of, oh, I'm working, I'm doing schoolwork, but more of life, how to think about life.
So it's not just like the aspect of work; it's more of the integral parts that you put together that make up life. So the community aspects and all of the things that are good with work and school, but also the personal life, um, not just focusing on the trade. You really help build up the person, and then that
Hmm.
helps build up the community. Uh,
Yeah, and it doesn't only affect me in the end. It affects everyone of kind of knowing other people's situations and just maybe maybe this isn't the right term per se, but like having more worldly view,
oh, okay, yeah, because
just being a little bit more knowledgeable.
yeah, knowledgeable about the world. It's not about like being worldly in the sense of being carnal. We're talking
Yeah.
about just being more uh, competent of what happens in the world.
Hmm.
Oh, okay, that's what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to take that a step further, if we didn't do that, I think the mentorship program wouldn't be able to really give it direction. Because if you only give them direction for part of the school year and then they've achieved it, it's over, it never really left them with anything to keep them going. And I think that's what
Hmm.
we did that people seem to really appreciate was how do we get ready for the job but also do well at school and also get ready for the next stages of life, which is, and that's what we'd bring up. I remember saying, hey, why did you come to school? And people would say, well, I wanted to get opportunity. It's like, there you go. So what is this opportunity going to bring you? Well, eventually some kind of middle class life where I can survive and have a family. And it's like, okay, so we have a really good mid game here for you. So now you understand that everything you do in order to get there isn't just, oh, I have to do this homework. It's like, no, this homework is an incremental step into getting where you need to go. And then
Hmm.
once all the homework's over, then there's the exams, and then there's more homework, and then there's more exams. But eventually that
Yeah.
quarter is over. And
And honestly, there's more than just getting through midterms, getting through finals, getting through each quarter. It's more of how do you get through the next, I would hope, 20 to maybe 50 years of your life.
as opposed to it being, yeah, you're just so hand to mouth. And that's going to happen in some regard in the quarter system, but you don't have to face it with that attitude all the time. Granted, there's going to be those times where you really got to put the blinders on. But in our case, we really did say, like, hey, like the way you behave in life and what you're going for in life matter just as much, if not more so. So don't squander your short term game for the long term plan that you know you want to get. So,
Hmm.
and I'm hoping we keep doing that kind of thing. Moving along here with that same mindset. What do you think it takes to encourage young people?
To put in simple terms, mission and purpose.
Mission and purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little more?
Yeah. So the other week ago, a old mentee actually reached out to me. They got a job offer at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, where I work as well. And, he was looking at it and looking at, um, different pieces. And, it came up in conversation of, do I enjoy what I do? And meanwhile, that might be one piece of the whole puzzle. It doesn't have to come from work. So, like, realizing what it is that truly interests you and gives you a mission or purpose in life, and making sure that your lifestyle as a whole accommodates that. So, like, for him, I asked him, well, is it the work that you want to be interested in, or like what truly matters to you? And he said, friends and family. I'm like, well, this job at this location will give you a great lifestyle balance and will give you that time to do what you want outside of work, which I think spoke to him more so than the actual job itself.
So the mission of at least getting his personal life functioning and
Yeah,
thriving.
so it's going back to the question of what motivates you most and why. Ma- Mirroring that type of thoughtfulness into mentees to really understand what it is and how to achieve that. Because it could be work, it could be career wise, it could be hobbies, it could be people like me. It's what's that small, small or big thing that really, you wake up and you're excited about the day.
Excitement about the
Because
day as opposed
because
to,
otherwise
yeah,
you can't encourage anyone.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, it was cool to see mentees light up like a Christmas tree when they really wanted to get something done. Even though I'm a pessimist myself, um, I knew what they needed as far as giving them that sense of purpose and mission. And that's going to be the fire under the butt. I'd say it's they also need to know they're not in it alone, which you head up on I think a couple questions ago. And they also need to know that that someone's got their back. Like they really are in this, facing it together as a team. It's not like this, oh, I'm stuck in this by myself, and the only way I'm going to get out is through my own efforts. I think we could agree that the mentorship family didn't promote that at all. It said, no, we're going to get through this together, and we're going to be able to use each other's strengths and weaknesses to mesh into a integral fighting force to get through the university in a
Hmm.
way that would be better than if you just fought it all on your own. And I think another thing that helps is giving people this sense of internal love that, oh, there's someone that actually cares about me enough to just tell me this information in a way that I can understand it, in a way that's not harsh. It's not like the 1975 high school scene where you got the Gen Xers that are like saying, this is my clique, this is your clique.
Hmm.
Breaking that down was really important, in my opinion. And that was something I really tried to avoid in making our mentorship family during undergrad, because that seems to divide people rather than put them together. And it makes this social stigma of, okay, I have to be in this spot right now, and I can't socialize with people in this way. I wanted to throw all that out the window and just say, look, we're an integral team, and this is how we're going to get through the university together. And here's some of the things we've learned so far that we want to teach you and might give you the edge when you're actually in the class, and give
Hmm.
you a mental bridge to just get through it without banging your head against the wall. Because you could argue not a lot of people get trained up for junior year. I mean, you remember what that was like.
I do.
Yeah, it's a catastrophe if you have bad expectations, because you're trying to go one way and then the class is going another, and then now you got to circle back to try and get where everyone else is. I didn't think that was a good strategy. So putting the mentorship family together with those characteristics seemed to really help. Um, I know for me that was something I wanted to have, and I never really got it. Um, Irony is, being a mentor kind of supplanted a lot of that, and it was just a joy
Hmm.
to see all of our fellow mentees and mentors together, just encouraging one another in getting through and succeeding in the major, and then succeeding in getting an internship and getting the next job, and eventually graduating. So, did you have anything else to add about what makes young people um, thrive in a mentorship?
I would say about the last piece is it has to come from within them. They want to be open and willing.
I'm glad you said that, because that's the two-way street thing. You can't have a mentorship family without a two-way street, and that really hinders it if only the mentor is putting in the work, because then it just feels like you're putting a rock up a hill, and they're only moving when you say move, and then when you leave, they're back to where they were before, just stagnant. Whereas the mentee that's trying to really try and get information with an absent mentor or an absent-minded mentor, that's just as bad, because you feel like you're in it all by yourself, and you felt like you didn't really achieve what you could have before you hit a lot of those challenges. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And that brings us to our next point here. What strategies have you implemented to encourage young folk when you're trying to get them to move forward in the university or in the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you mentioned this already, but as the mentor, really being available and at least for the first amount of time, really being the one who initiates. Um, and as you said, the mentees knowing that, oh, you have their back. Oh, have, other mentees have my back. Building those basic blocks for that community.
Building up the trust, building up the
Yeah.
friendship. Yes. Without that, all that information that you may give them might just fall through their ears, because they're still kind of focused on, can I trust this guy? Can I trust those around me? Am I in the right place, or do I need to leave and find somewhere else? If those questions aren't answered, it's a lot harder to get the information to stick in them. Yeah, yeah. I think the trust and the friendship, reciprocation, you get that engine going, the mission and drive is going to be like the fuel that pushes them towards a better success in whatever they're
Mm-hmm.
doing, whether it's the internship they got, or the hard fluid mechanics class, or even being able to help someone else out. Um, you could argue that mentorship really does start when the mentees pull their weight and you see them transition into more of a mentor figure in training than just a mentee, which I believe you did a really good job at, because you really started taking the reins on what kind of stuff are we going to do in the family that's going to get people to bond together easier. How are we going to be able to work together more effectively? How about maybe even making some friends that I would even hang out with in a non-mentorship setting? So
Mm-hmm.
and that was really cool to watch, because once you start getting mentors in training, they really start taking the reins on the mentorship family's direction, and it's just about facilitating that. So I definitely appreciate your input on um, the strategies, because a lot of young folks sometimes feel like they're just not heard. Um, but by being the initiator and being a listener, that seems to
Mm-hmm.
be a good choice. Um, and I think that answers question 6 about inspiring hope in young people. I think with that definitely answers that question already. Um,
Definitely.
um, but here's some things. Once the trust and the friendship really starts to get going, um, what are some of the key information and ideas that need that the mentor needs to give to the mentee once you really start getting that trust going? So whether in an industry setting or in an academic setting.
Yeah. So you're saying after, trust is established, availability, commitment.
Yeah, the hard part,
Um,
because that's usually when a lot of things go awry.
yeah, I mean, I would say setting goals, whether that's career, uh, being classes, jobs, internships, whatever that is, or personal. Um, really, I mean, it's really looking at once you build that trust, it's going back to your question of what does it take to encourage people? What is the mission or purpose? What makes people wake up in the mornings? It's understanding that and trying to make that happen. Maybe just in general for the mentee, whether that's from mentorship, whether that's something the mentee does on their own, that sense of self-awareness per se, of what do they need to get out of mentorship, or um, the mentorship as a whole, challenging them to think more about this.
So definitely getting them up in the morning. That's that motivation of I need to be able to communicate with someone better than me to get on with my classes and actually take it seriously versus okay, oh, it's just another differential equation. I don't need to learn that. It's like, well, actually, that might be the diffy Q that's going to come up later. And if you put that off now, you may make a habit of putting that same equation off later for some academic course.
Yeah, you need to look at it holistically. Maybe you don't like classes, but maybe you really like where completing the degree, completing the classes will get you to at the end. It's always more of thinking about the bigger picture and what is next.
Yeah, the bigger picture. People had a fallacy, I think, in the university, and I succumbed to this myself in lower div. There's this tendency to think that, oh, I'm just getting through this course so I can get a job eventually. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, that may be true, but I think the bigger goal of academics, at least where we came from in engineering, was really trying to get you mentally tough, mentally ready for tools and mathematical methods and the science that goes behind it so you can, instead of just dialogue about everything, you actually can come up with quantitative assessments of problems and try and graph out solutions that would be easier to back up your scientific cases for why a
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon is occurring. And I think people really didn't respect that by this sophomore year in my class. We really just said we kind of just want to get through this so we can get on with our major classes in upper div. But really, it's building up your brain in incremental steps every year to the point where you can finally say that, yeah, I didn't necessarily master the material, but I got so much more advanced in my ways of modeling and getting through the scientific classes to be able to understand what's going on in the real world. You didn't necessarily need that to understand the stuff in the real world, but it gives you that academic weight to off balance what you get in an industry setting, which usually isn't very academic. Um, and I think that's really healthy to have a good academic industry balance so you can talk with a higher variety of people without just saying, oh, that person's just a nerd, or oh, that person's just a brute, that operator that's just out there, or that chemist that just can't get over chemistry models and such. It's like, no. They're both important. And I think that was really important to our growing in life, really. So, and I think we did a decent job in the mentorship family in trying to instill that not all of these classes are important, but the methods and the learning behind it and working together and overcoming them were. So,
Mm-hmm.
so with that being said, what strongest impact did you have on a particular mentee?
I don't think I can single out a particular mentee. I would say the strongest impacts are or were um, getting that real sense of community, the mentorship family, and really instilling a sense of success is um, not achieved alone. It is bringing others with you, whether that's, or I guess for this sense, through mentorship of passing down your knowledge to other people and really instilling that sense of mentorship is a piece that people really find value in.
I think I had some similar success with groups, but I would argue that I still had some individuals that I would be able to say um, were really important in one on one with me. Um, you know about Gen 1. I mean, they don't call him that for nothing. I mean, he's definitely one of them. I might have him on at some point as well, if he's brave enough to do it. Um, you, I would say, Daniel, are also one of them, as I said before, just by seeing the fruits. Um, I'd say Brian would be another one to some extent, and I could think of several others. Um, and it was really cool to watch the individuals along with the group development because I think both had a part to play in making what it was. Um, and I enjoyed the group environment just as much. Um, but I really saw like there were some shining individuals in there that I think made it worthwhile, and I really liked it. So, how about in industry? Have you been able to find anyone in industry that's been kind of along the same path as you, or uh, that's kind of giving you a hand in getting forward with moving on to the next part of your life, or being able to interview better, or side gigs?
Yeah, I would say, I think school does a really good job of providing time and space to find mentors, and they are readily available. Work is definitely a little bit more difficult because you more or less, depending on where you work, you have to find your own set of mentors yourself. So whether that's if those mentors are part of your group, they are fellow chemical engineers or whatever major you are, or mentors in a position where you ultimately want to see yourself going. And, at least that last one, if you want to be a vice president of marketing, let's just say, in order to really get that person as a mentor, that, you need to get their time and attention. So it's difficult. Not saying it's not possible. You just need to make yourself available and really just show, hey, this is what I want to do. Um, and, just come along for the ride, even if that means maybe you put in some volunteer time or work for free for them for a couple hours a week.
So a lot of it's putting yourself out there in the industry
You have
world.
to.
Yeah. So that's a good point, I think, because unlike at the academic environment where it's more about, hey, show up, we've got a program, this is like a yearly thing. The industry one, there could be nothing, and you got to figure out if you can even get a spot, and it might just be only you, and you got to show that you're worth the time.
Yeah, and I would say for myself personally, I am trying to pivot more into clean tech. So for the last about year and a half or so, I have been going to clean tech events and networking as well as doing cold messages to people to talk to them, get informational interviews. That's only the first step. The next step, someone get the first step, that's great. Maybe you'll have a 10 to 20% response rate or willingness rate per se. After that, because you were the one who initiated it, they are going to expect you to continue to keep them updated and ping them when you need help or when you need advice or whatever. So, in that sense, it can become more one sided. which is fine as long as the mentors you choose have valuable input.
As opposed to just, I don't know what you want from me. You just kind of were asking about something about green tech. I mean, I can help you in this sector, but I'm a very specialized department that really can't help you in the general purpose aspect of green tech everywhere. Maybe it just might be wind and solar turbines and then nothing else. But from that rep, I bet that you probably encounter that a lot, where they have a very specific duty.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to be very explicit, saying, um, let's just say, for instance, LinkedIn messaging or emails. It needs to be short, needs to be sweet, needs to be simple. I'll just say, hey, I stumbled upon your profile. I'd love to hop on a call with you to learn about like 2 different bullet points. Maybe it's how you got to where you were and why did you go and get a law degree to get the job you are at.
You said, is it still about 10 to 20% response rate for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would say it's a hit or miss. Some people are very active on LinkedIn. Some people, if you can figure out their email, that's definitely a bit of a better strategy. But honestly, the best way is you go to these events where these people will be.
So go to the events, find them, and you can, aha, I've got you in the dialogue.
Yeah.
Now it's a hook, line, and sinker. Because then when you exchange LinkedIn info or emails, they already know who you are. You're not this internet stranger. You may still
Yeah.
be a stranger, but they at least know, they know who you are in real life enough to, like, yeah, I'll give him that interview because I talked to him in person. This would be a lot easier than um, figuring out who this
Yeah.
person is live on video or in an email setting, where it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is kind of how I got here. Did that answer your question? Dot dot dot.
Yeah. And, I personally have an example of this. I was at an AICHE conference and I was in one of the sessions, and the person in front of me had their suitcase, or no, briefcase with a card holder. And it was a Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory card. I'm just like, I wonder who this is. And, I saw the card, and the name rang a bell. I'm just like, I don't know why this name sounds so familiar. After that session, I went up to him and I asked him, hey, do you work at Lawrence Livermore? Turns out he used to work there for 10 years at like a very high level as essentially an assistant director of the lab. And he knew lots of people. And we ended up connecting there, talking for an hour, grabbing lunch the next day. And we've been in touch for the last 2.5 years now. And, um, you know, it was just serendipity that I stumbled across this guy, but he has been tremendously helpful in the sense of my career where I'm currently at, and maybe some other ideas to explore. That has definitely been, I would say, when it's in person and there's a very unusual common experience or something you have in common, that goes a long way. And I would say this one is definitely more two-sided than one-sided.
And this is all just because you saw a little card on this guy's
Yeah, his
briefcase.
business card. Yeah, yeah, just like you know.
Yeah, business cards are pretty handy in that regard. I need some new ones. I still have my ones from like 2016 when I was still
Mm.
at the same job title. So that's actually a really good example about being cognizant of, okay, I'm online versus and I'm in a conference setting. Conference setting, you're more open for the for the dialogue about stuff. That's what you're there for. You're trying to figure out what everyone else is doing, and then they're
Yeah.
trying to figure out what you're doing. So it's a nice trade of info, nice open society feature we have.
Yeah. And, to that point, when I do outreach, cold outreach, I need to give a little bit of context saying, oh, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background because blank. I'd love to learn about why you went to grad school because blank. Like giving a little bit more context of why should they talk to you?
Yeah, is it normally trying to get info about, hey, I've got friends who've wanted to do this. I'm thinking about it myself. You have that kind of title. What would it take for me to set up a meeting with you? That kind of idea.
Yeah, but it's really I think this would be a very cool role or position or career path or whatever it is. It's for yourself. It's not for anyone else. It has to be you that is
Okay.
interested.
Yeah, so don't do it on behalf of someone else. Uh, More likely say, no, this is what's interests
You want to
me.
be invested. If they respond back and say, "Sure, let's set up a call," what good is it if you aren't truly interested in what it is? If only your friends are, you need to be at least interested.
Roger. So don't try and do this like half-hearted response. If you really want to do stuff like this, at least show you're willing to put in the effort of, I am interested enough at this time to figure out, or I want to figure out what this is all about. I've heard some great things about it. Is it worth it? And I want
Yeah.
to I want to hear what you got to say. And as opposed to, well, I don't know what's going on with this. Maybe I'll send him a message and see what happens. And then just,
Yeah, and there are lots of people with shiny titles or jobs, but you could go down that rabbit hole and message a couple thousand people. So from that perspective, you have to figure out, okay, of these thousand people, what is it that's truly unique about maybe 10% of them that makes me want to talk to these people over the rest?
okay.
In other words, having an you know thesis or scope.
Yeah.
It needs to be true to who you are and what you want to do.
Yeah, people can tell pretty easy if it's like this person, this guy doesn't want to know about me. Like if someone's in biology and they're asking about something radically on the philosophy side. Hey, I'm thinking about being a philosophy graduate in graduate school. It's like you're a biology undergrad. What are you doing? Like that's totally against what you're studying. Are you going to switch? It's like, did you mention any of that? It's like, okay, he didn't mention any of that, and he
Yeah.
just okay. Yeah, I know what you mean there. So it's got to fit your thesis. It actually brings me to the next question here. Um, why do so many people fail to mentor effectively?
I would say to lead in from the last question, part of it is, do they really care? And you can kind of see that if they don't really make the time or don't really want to put in the commitment. Um, but that could also happen where people do truly want to mentor, but they just are spread so thin, don't have the bandwidth. Maybe something personal happens. It's really people need to have their priorities, and my belief is if something truly matters, you'll make time for it. So if you truly want to be a bodybuilder, you're going to carve out a time, at least an hour a day, to go to the gym. Whether if you are in school and you're working part-time as well and you're working two jobs, you're going to wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go and do that because that matters.
Yes, the sincerity of purpose. this, oh, I want to be a mentor, and then you find out that 2 weeks later they're not answering their email, they're not being the initiative, they're not having the initiative. That sets a bad precedence. Yeah, I think you're right there, and it also is going to be in their lifestyle. And if people don't have that, I mean, the mentees are going to see that right away because they're looking for
Hmm.
somebody who's really got time and attention for them. Because there's this expectation of, oh, he's a mentor, he's going to give me some of his time, probably not too much since he's busy, but there will be some level of connection that I'll be able to benefit from because he signed up as one. And then you find out
Hmm.
that that didn't happen. Like in our case, we had a lot of mentors who like they didn't message their guys more than the first week, and then you got like 30 mentees going, my family's not doing anything, what do we do about that? And then they just kind of like, I guess we just wait for the mentor. It's like that's kind of a bad strategy, but I mean it's kind of a naive one too.
Yeah, and that's the downfall of mentorship, which is why I say, at the end of the day, it needs to be a little bit more than, formally setting something up. It needs to be, open communication.
As opposed to this, well, I'm a mentor but I'm not really doing anything. um, so you got it on your nice resume title, and it's like, okay, great, but no one's benefiting from it.
Yeah. And, actually, to that point of if it's on your resume or not, I actually, so my resume, I don't have mentorship on there. Um, you know, it's something where, you know, I, I don't know why I don't have it on there, but it's more of I'm not doing it for the resume value. I'm doing it for myself at the end of the day because that's who I am. Um, it doesn't mean I won't talk about it if it comes up in an interview or something professionally, but I'm not trying to say, oh, hey, look at me. I do this thing.
Oh, agreed. It's the the pride of mentorship, I guess. I keep mine on just because I've kept it up from time to time, and I
Yeah.
really want to show that's part of who I am.
Yeah.
Um,
Plus, you are actually doing that at your work, right? So I think that speaks more because you were still doing that in a professional setting. I think that's appropriate. I think if it's, oh, yeah, more personal, separate from everything, of, oh, it's very casual. I'll maybe talk to them once a month. Eh.
yeah, that's it. It's the it's this mediocrity that that drives me crazy. Like when I wanted to learn something from people and they've got this mediocrity, it's a big turnoff in the learning environment. It's like, okay, I'm probably not going to get that much out because we have such a low bandwidth going in. So
Mhm.
it's great to have somebody who's got not necessarily charismatic, but has charisma, and that has this sense of like, dude, when I was your age, I messed up here, 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 here. You guys are nailing it in these two areas. Maybe I can help you with these other two areas because you wouldn't know unless you've been around. And at work,
Mhm.
especially, like knowing how to do the documentation. If no one's ever showed it to you before, and you've never dealt with like a troubleshooting problem at a process line, and you never knew who you're supposed to go to as far as getting a problem solved within health and safety. I mean, you get all these problems lined up, and that you're doing it the first time, and you're doing it live. Are you kidding me? I think that's a complete mistake. You're asking for someone to mess up, except the problem is that they're going to mess up with consequences. At least in the simulation setting, which is what we try to do in a lot of mentorship activities. Of course, we did live stuff that mattered, that had consequences. But I'm saying we need to have some simulated uh, things to do so that way they can mess up in a safe area. And then they go, right, it's going to be similar to this when we get out into a real situation. But I already know where the pitfalls are before walking in. And I think we need more of that. I mean, the military does it. We've got, I mean, academia does it. They for sure, they don't always do homework that's weighted. Uh,
Yeah.
Other jobs do it. I'm wondering why the heck mine doesn't. So I want to turn that around and have some kind of simulations training where you put them on
Yeah,
the spot.
and a quick plug there. There's a lot of cool, innovative technology in the virtual reality and augmented reality space where they're really focused on training, which I think is valuable in the sense of, okay, they're putting you in that simulation, and here there are truly no real life consequences.
And then you can actually see what happens. And then you may find out that, oh wow, that wasn't so smart. I should try to not do that next time. Oh, okay. And then if you have an instructor or a mentor that's telling you, hey man, you just did this, cool. You just lost your batch. You just lost the exam because you failed to understand the fundamentals on these three levels and you didn't solve the problem. Instead, we just got a bigger one. And then now they go, oh, right. Um, you got to be careful with the bill of materials. You can't just add whatever you want into the batch. There's a bill of materials for a reason. That's going to be your boundaries. You need to get R&D if you want to screw around your bill of materials on your raws. So that kind of thing is just okay, cool. Now I know.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you haven't been in the world in like the industry before. Like put me in your shoes in Lawrence Livermore. I'm coming from a pharmaceutical and oil background. Two different jobs, completely unrelated. Yours would be a third unrelated job, and then I have to learn it all over again. So I appreciate it every time there is some level of structure to help me learn what I need to learn. So, yeah, I think we hit that one over the head, though. I mean, failing to mentor effectively, a lot of it's time, effort, attention. The competency isn't so good. Like you've seen some mentors that didn't even have the right competency, and you're just wondering what the heck happened there. It's like, aren't you the one who got through junior year? You're a senior now, and you can't remember a differential equation. It's like that's not good.
Yeah.
Granted, we didn't see very many people like that, but there's always like that bottom 10% that somehow just scrape by, and then there's like, oh yeah, I don't remember that. For the next question, Daniel, are there any mentees that were difficult for you to mentor? And what do you think made it so hard for some of these guys to get involved, or they just made the mentorship difficult?
I would say it honestly goes back to the last question, why people fail to mentor effectively. And, it's a two-way street where, if the mentor doesn't have time, availability, commitment, priorities, that's one thing. But it's also that mentee has to make it a priority as well. It's a two-way street. There's no way about it.
No way about it, ladies and gentlemen. You have to put in the effort, both sides. And I think we've talked about that. So no one in particular was really giving you a hard time. It was more of just people not putting in the effort. It wasn't like someone trying to be antagonistic or anything.
Yeah, well, let's say, if someone is antagonistic, what are you going to do? Why should you try to mentor them if they, one, maybe they don't want the mentorship, and two, they don't want it, or yeah, it's really just one reason of they just they aren't open to it, they don't want it, they don't want to welcome it.
See, I'm right there with you. With this is a volunteer mentorship program. So if we've got somebody who doesn't want to be there, you got two options. One, change your time and effort so you can actually stay and then maybe you'll learn something despite your bad attitude. Or two, get the heck out. Someone was giving on the last podcast, they were giving Julian a hard time. And I was like, man, if someone did that to me, I would have no problem saying, look, man, I don't have to do this right now. I've got 3 homework assignments and a midterm next week. I don't have to be here. I can shut this down right now, and I can just get back to what I was doing. Um, Unless you want mentorship, I mean, I could just stop this right now. Don't think that I'm holding you up. I can just stop it right. And then usually if it's a group setting, the people who really like it start ostracizing that person if they keep doing that kind of behavior.
Exactly.
And then now the turns have tabled on that guy, and now he's got the two choices of leaving or improving his attitude a little bit to stick around, even if it's begrudgingly. Um, we had one guy who was just a little on the annoying side, not necessarily malicious, but you could argue a troll. And trolling's fine. You just got to know your limits when like it's a group setting, because you're stealing other people's time if you're trolling too much. Like the
Yeah.
people who ask questions in class, and it's like, what's M? In that variable, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, he just explained it. Now we got to go back over for a minute. He just took $1 out of everyone's pocket to say that question.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I find that kind of rude, because that's like, if I actually saw someone take $1 from everyone's pocket to ask a question, I'd be kind of mad. So, I guess you answered that one pretty well. I've only got one more question left for you, Daniel. What is the future of you in mentorship going forward in the next like couple years or so?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's going to be staying in touch with mentees, finding mentors for myself, and as I can, I'll place myself in um, places where there are opportunities to mentor. So as I'm applying to business schools, there are programs where during the first year, they will train you if you are admitted to, whatever kind of mentorship program there is, or fellowship, or whatever they want to title it, or being like campus ambassadors. And then during the second year, you get assigned first years. That's something that's definitely on my radar. And it for me, it's a pay it forward type of mentality.
Yeah, put the effort in now so that way later it really starts to bloom.
Yeah, well, you know, so you mentored me, and then I decided to continue mentoring others, right?
Yes.
Like you don't do it. I mean, maybe you do it for yourself, but you also do it for the others. You don't want other people to make the same mistakes.
Oh no.
You want to see everyone in your mentorship family succeed. That's truly like what you want to get out of it at the end.
Yeah, you've made a contribution that people can't take away. I'll never forget being a mentor in the undergrad environment. That was so cool, um, because people were so hungry for it too. Like we found people that were really just, we want this. This is not being given to us normally. A lot of families aren't getting this. Mentorship families. This one is off the charts. I want to be in that one. And then it just turns into like this Pareto distribution of all these people coming over to our side. I mean, how many mentees do we have? It was like we had like 30, I think, at one point. It was crazy.
Yeah, I have a quick question for you in that sense.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I helped out one of the years with forming the mentorship families and such, and to your point, there are people that come along. Do you think it's a good use of time for people to try to match up people, or do you think it's better to have mentorships form naturally and just provide that space and environment to let that happen?
See, that's tricky because the way the mentorship family got formed at first was through what, like the speed dating model. So you have like
Yeah.
60 seconds to talk to a mentor, and then you change seats, and then you keep talking to all these people, and then they throw in their bid for who they want, and then they match up with whoever. I guess that works if it's everyone's a stranger to some degree. I can't say it doesn't work. Um, the problem is you don't know how it's going to play out in the next month. So, for example, maybe that one guy who was really charismatic at first ends up not being available. So then you got all these people that were going to go with that family, then it just kind of dies off. The natural method I prefer more, but it just takes a little longer. Um, that's a tough question, though. I would, I would like to say the natural method, but I can't give the best reasoning why it would work practically. I know the speed dating one is like that's just very industrial. You try and get some cycle time with everybody, and then everyone throws in their bid. That seems to be like the go-to. Um, Maybe there could be a third way with getting to know you. Like, well, we did do that actually. That was 2 years before. Your freshman year, we did a sit down with people, and that's kind of how we established if the mentees and mentors were going to stick around. So we went to a restaurant and we sat there and we talked to everyone. But primarily the people you were going to mentor were with you.
Yeah.
So
So,
so you got
oh,
random
go ahead.
choice, or you have some kind of democratic speed dating model, or natural where you just put people in a room and see where they go. Um, I want to pick that third option, but I don't have a good way to describe why. What do you think?
Well, I think um, to your third option is, when it's more natural, there's no external um, pressure. So like
Yeah.
the speed dating, it's just like, oh, you're going to be paired off with mentors. Great. This is why we're here, which is fine because that gives focus to the focus, no, to the space and environment. Um, but if it's just more general, let's just say a networking event or club meeting, or just more open-ended, there's no external force or pressure to form that. It's like friendships. When you make friends, it's not forced upon you. I mean, maybe it is because if people are in the same class, it's a little bit different. But I would say, other than that, right, at the end of the day, it's up to you of who you want to be friends with and who's in your circle. That's what I would compare it to.
So you would argue it's more choice driven by the natural way of doing it, which is kind of like how you make friends. Um,
Exactly.
that would be the model then. Yeah. So that was what I was missing. Okay. So you treat it more like the friend model. That's what I was looking for. So when you made your friends, you chose it by proximity, personality, some kind of care among another. If you can speak the same language. Um,
Yeah, and if you think about it, what are friends? I would say there's definitely a sense of going to friends for advice. I mean, it's definitely not more professional advice. I mean, maybe it is, but at the end of the day, you want to be able to go to your friends when you have issues, and vice versa with mentorship. At the end of the day, you want to consider those people as friends,
I would say
like
so.
us, for example, right?
Yes, like us. Yeah, the friend
Yeah.
model is that's what I wanted to call it. Because the natural way, I was like, I'm not sure how that works. It's like, oh, it's the way a friendship works. That's what I was missing.
Hmm.
Cool. That being said, I mean, I hope other mentorships end up being that way. Um, I know the speed dating thing to me, it why do you think it makes people uncomfortable? I know for me, it just makes me absolutely uncomfortable, even in like a mentorship setting.
I mean, can you really make a decision or judgment on someone based off of a couple minute interaction, maybe 5 minutes? maybe
5 minutes
even
is
10
pushing it.
minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 minutes, okay, maybe, but that's really just personality. I mean, let's just take a very extreme example. What each people is very extreme on the political scale? Of course, you're not going to talk about that during those 10 minutes. Will that really affect anything? I don't think so either, but you're trying to put a time limit of, oh, you need to make a decision. Go.
As opposed to just have, here's an hour to hang out, see what you like, see if you guys exchange numbers and contact info, see what
Yeah, I mean,
happens.
I'm not saying that, to assess if someone is going to be your friend, you need a certain amount of time. I mean, I met someone maybe about a month ago. He and I talked for maybe 5 minutes at the end of an event, and we're still in touch. We text each other and we see each other at events, and it just happened. It's unnecessary to put timelines or conditions on making determinations.
You could argue that would have made the mentorship families even stronger that first quarter from that, as opposed to everyone waiting around for a quarter to figure out if the families even function, and then the second quarter where people actually find out which families are doing stuff and which ones are not. Huh. I mean, if I ever end up doing this again with people, it'd be good to know about that. I guess there's a fourth way where you just have no choice at all, and they just say, "Here's your mentor, here's your mentee," and it's like, "Thanks. I guess I'm gonna have to roll with it now."
Yeah, I mean that's a different scenario, a different situation. I'm sure that's what business school would be like. It'll be like, all right, cool. You're going to be assigned to these people, and it's just like, okay, great, cool. I mean, it's just like, being assigned cohorts in like grad school. A good friend of mine did a master's in microbiology down at UC Irvine, and there were 10 or 15 people doing that with him. It's like, okay, here are your people.
That's not necessarily a bad thing because,
No,
oh yeah,
it's just more of a situational thing. It's just like
situational thing.
taking classes together.
Yeah, like with my last job, when they said, "Okay, you're going to Williston, North Dakota." All right, and they're like, "Okay, Heather's going to be your mentor." It's like, "Oh, okay." Um, yep, she's FE2, going to be a GFE. She's seen a lot of experience. Go for it. It's like, okay, it's a situational thing. I'm going with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I ended up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, was there anything else you wanted to say in conclusion, Mr. Daniel? So far, I've really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the real takeaway is what what do you want to get out of mentorship? And is it something you want to make time for? Those are like the two pieces.
Yeah, it's up, and only you can choose.
Because if you don't really care, then why do it in the first place? You need to be invested.
I would say the same in the sense of being invested. Half-hearted mentorship doesn't really. Then it's more about the notes and just getting through the class, and instead of the relationships you build and the life lessons you learn along the way, which can be
Mm-hmm.
so helpful in character development. And
Yeah.
character is something you can't, like, that's the sincere part of who you are that people can't take away. And I'm hoping that people actually got that while we were in mentorship together. Because if they didn't have that, I mean, what's the point of getting to where you're at if you end up being a complete scumbag? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that having value. I just saw someone that just went up the ladder and just said thanks a bunch and then just turned into a jerk all the way up. I think that's a bad strategy. If you get someone with good character, though, and you get a lot of them and they work together and they all have this sense of competency and purpose,
Mm-hmm.
now you've got this, like, you can hang out with those people again. I would love to. It's like, yes, this is a lot more fun, a lot more meaningful.
Exactly.
So with that, Mr. Daniel, thanks for the conclusion remarks here. we're gonna wrap it up. And thanks for having it and being here on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Oh man, totally. Okay, thanks a lot.